You are now live, Councillor Seaton.
Thank you very much. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the Scrutiny Commission for Charnwood Borough Council. There are a number of things I would like to remind people before we start with the items on the agenda. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Council's website following the meeting. Under the Openness of Local Government Bodies regulation, people may film or record this meeting, and this is outside the Council's control. However, people wishing to film or record the meeting should do so in a way that it does not disrupt the meeting or the business of that meeting. Also, so that the meeting is not disturbed, could I ask everybody present to please turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent, and ensure that your environment is distraction free. And can I remind everyone that this is a public meeting, so please conduct yourself in the appropriate manner. Thank you. As this is a virtual meeting, members will need to introduce themselves and tell whether you can see or hear the proceedings. Members will also use their raise hand facility when the participant section of the Zoom software if they wish to speak, and will be allowed to do so in a queuing system. It's important for the purpose of the recording of attendance and transparency that you all advise whether you can see and hear the proceedings. Right, Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bolton, I confirm that I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you. Yes, I'm here. I can confirm I can see and hear the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Grimley, I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hodge-Nicolau.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hodge-Nicolau here. I can hear and see the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hamilton here. I can confirm that I can both see and hear proceedings.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ransom.
Thank you, Chair. I can both hear and see the proceedings.
Thank you, Councillor. And I can see and hear the proceedings. I'm also going to ask each officer that is attending the meeting whether they can see and hear the proceedings. So, Councillor Margaret Smidowicz, lead member for strategic support.
Yes, Councillor Margaret Smidowicz, I can both hear and see you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Boker, lead member for Loughborough.
Sorry, just trying to unmute. Yes, I can see. Councillor Jenny Boker, I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Harper-Lee Davis. Communication support and equalities.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Lee Harper-Davies, I can see and hear proceedings this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Simon Jackson, Strategic Director of Environmental and Corporate Services.
Thank you, Chair. I can both see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Sylvia Wright, Head of Leisure and Culture.
Thank you, Chair. Sylvia Wright here. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Matt Bradford, Head of Cleansing and Open Spaces.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Kevin Bruin, Learning and Organisational Development Coordinator. We're going to have to make that an acronym, I think.
You're right. Thank you, Chair. I can both hear and see the meeting.
Thank you. Karen Widdowson, Democratic Services Manager.
Thank you, Chair. I can both see and hear proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. Nikki Conway, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you, Chair. I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Sally Watson, Democratic Service Officer.
Thank you, Chair. I can hear and see. We've also got Adrian Ward, Head of Strategic Support as well.
You've just spoilt it now. You see, I've written all these notes and nobody will know now. So I'm going to say it. Adrian Ward, Head of Strategic Support.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. And we were probably going to have a visit from Rob Mitchell, but as yet he's not arrived, so he might not be coming. So item 1, please. Apologies.
Madam Chair, we've had no apologies for the meeting. We've got a full complement tonight.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Right, at this point, I'm asking you verbally, are there any, if you're content to receive and note the minutes? Councillor Bolton.
Yes, I'm happy to accept the minutes, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, I accept the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Grimley. I saw your mouth move, so thank you. Councillor Harsh-Nicolau.
I'm happy with the minutes, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy with the minutes.
Councillor Ransom.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy with the minutes. Thank you.
And I'm also extremely happy with the minutes. Thank you. So the minutes will be signed off as being correct. Item 3 is disclosure of pecuniary and personal interest. And I haven't got any of those notifications yet. No, thank you very much. Item 4, declarations of party whip. There's none to report, unless you know different. Item 5, questions on the Scrutiny Committee procedures, 11.16. There are no questions submitted. Item 6 is audit community, the committee update. A quick update on there would be that we've decided to proceed with our monthly meetings, and the audit committee is to add on to their agenda. Can you help me with the wordings on that, please, Karen?
So thank you, Chair. So yes, the monthly meetings are continuing between the Audit Committee Chair and Vice Chair and the Scrutiny Commission Chair and Vice Chair. And you, in fact, had a meeting on the 8th of January. And one of the outcomes from that recent liaison meeting was that in future, the Audit Committee agenda will also include an item about asking any members if they've got any items they wish to forward to the Scrutiny Commission for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Item 7 is pre-decision scrutiny of any specific financial matters to be considered by the Cabinet, as there are no items of that nature to discuss. There's nothing further on that one. So item 8, Cabinet items for pre-decision scrutiny. The following items have been identified for pre-discussion scrutiny from the Cabinet agenda for the 14th of January 2021. So I go to item 8A, which is the People's Strategy, and that's on page 12. And I'd like to introduce Simon Jackson and Kevin Bruin. But first of all, I'd like to ask Councillor Smithovich to present the strategy.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Smithovich. I'm pleased to present the new People's Strategy to you tonight. Last year saw a revolution in the way people have had to change their ways of working, and Charnwood have responded at an incredible pace, which we now want to build on. The People's Strategy aligns with a number of related policies and sets out to explain how the Council intends to further develop its workforce over the next 4 years. The outcomes and actions are encapsulated within 5 themes that focus on priority areas in much more detail. Essential if we're to bring about a changed, modern, agile organisation. It's people that make things happen, working together with a shared culture and with shared values to produce an empowered, proactive, rather than a reactive workforce. I would add that there has been considerable discussion with staff and the unions, all of which will continue. But there will be challenges to face, and for this reason, you have before you the 2 recommendations to consider. and I'm sure the officers will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Simon.
I'd just like to thank Councillor Smidovic for that helpful introduction. I'd really quickly like to pass on to Kevin, because Kevin's done a lot of work here. It is, all I will say really, it is quite a significant strategy for us, and very definitely have in mind building on the what has been a tough time with the pandemic, but there's opportunities that have arisen through the sort of what we've done in terms of our response and the new behaviours that are sort of emerging. So there are good opportunities for us now, and as I say, Kevin's done a lot of work, so I'll just ask him to maybe highlight some of those for the panel before maybe we take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, so the new people strategy covers the period from this year 2021 to 2024. It's as Councillor Smidovic had already covered. It does present our strategy for how we're going to develop staff over the next few years and support staff through some of the changes and some of the key objectives that we've got in both the corporate strategy and the strategic direction. In terms of the 5 themes, we're focusing in this particular plan, first of all, in terms of the culture of the organisation, Charnwood culture. And as already been mentioned, the key component of that is building on the work and the development that's taken place in the council in the last year to modernise how we work and bring about a lot of flexibility in terms of both where and when staff can work in particular areas. It's important to build on that work and develop the culture and look at opportunities that we've got for much more of a effective mixed approach to how we work in the future so that we can be effective and efficient. The second theme looks at leadership and management, making sure that leadership and management is in place to support staff and to get the most out of staff moving forwards. The third theme is around healthy Charnwood, particularly focusing around staff wellbeing. A large part of that is obviously as a result of the change in how people work, the potential issues around mental health wellbeing through isolation of staff who are working remotely. But the second part of that is addressing some of the themes that we picked up in an independent staff survey around health and wellbeing that we conducted late in 2019. The fourth theme is focusing around how we're going to develop staff and also look at performance management in the organisation, and that includes a review of our appraisal system, but also looking at our recruitment and selection policies to make sure that we're getting the right people in the organisation moving forwards. And then finally, the fifth theme is around supporting the organisation, supporting Charnwood, and covers a number of miscellaneous areas, but it is about particularly how we're going to support staff moving forwards in terms of potential changes with potential budget cuts that we might have in the future. In terms of the delivery, the actions from the strategy are pulled together in terms of a people development plan that is going to be overseen by the new people group that's chaired by the Director Simon Jackson and forms part of the new Services, Work Placements and People's Board moving forwards.
Thank you very much, Kevin. If I could just start the ball off, I'm extremely concerned about people being not forced, but being made as if they have to work at home, or I'm very aware that some people will be not forced, as I say, to work at home, but it will be implied that you should work at home. Is that correct? Am I right to be concerned about that, Kevin?
No, not directly. I mean, overall, we want to move more staff to working remotely. That's certainly the case. But in terms of how the agile working component of this strategy is being developed, it's around identifying possible options and opportunities for flexible working, but particularly where staff have issues around the difficulties from working from home, and that could be, for example, because of their domestic situation. It could be because of other practicalities, or their job role may not really support working from home. We're looking as part of the policy to maintain the opportunity once the pandemic is over for staff to be able to work from an office environment. That setup may be different to what we have now. For example, we may be looking at touchdown areas and some more flexibility in that area, but certainly we're not looking at forcing staff to work from home where that wouldn't be appropriate or beneficial for them individually.
How many out of, I'm not quite sure how many staff we have got, but have you done the survey to ask how many would like to work remotely and how many would like to come into the offices?
Yeah, we've got approximately 550 staff. I think it's slightly below that at the moment. We have conducted a survey during the pandemic lockdown, really around general support for staff. But it's a lot more complicated than just asking staff about their preferences at the moment. So in terms of the agile working policy and procedure that is being developed, there's a process that we've piloted around how we engage with staff more directly around their circumstances and look at issues like wellbeing, and that involves meetings between the team manager and the staff member. And so far we've piloted that in 2 of the 10 service areas, and we're in the process now of evaluating that approach before we look at how we might develop that going forwards.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 things that I'd like to ask, but they're very different. So I'll just sort of take them in turn, if that's okay. I just wondered, why is an equality impact assessment not needed for this strategy? It is probably my sort of lack of awareness, but if somebody could explain, that would be helpful.
Yes, it's certainly something that I discussed with the equalities lead, strategic lead. What we felt was that an EIA, equality impact assessment, for the whole policy wouldn't be appropriate. But we look at the individual actions and some of the outcomes that we're considering. And for some of those, certainly an equality impact assessment would be appropriate. We'd be able to look in more detail at each one within an EIA, and perhaps would be beneficial trying to cover the whole strategy.
Thank you. My second question very much links in with what Councillor Seaton was asking, and I'm on page 24 of the agenda pack for this. I think there's a couple of statements in there that I'd perhaps like to challenge. Home working doesn't necessarily lead to a better work and life balance, which I think links into what Councillor Seaton was saying, which comes back to the extent to which staff are happy working from home. And it occurs to me that if you live in a 4-bedroom detached property, it's quite easy to work from home. if you live in a studio flat or a small one-bedroom flat, it's much more challenging because it becomes very difficult to switch off your work life from your home life. And linking into that, there's second to last paragraph talks about reduced sickness levels. And my question there is, I'm not sure that this working from home would lead to reduced sickness overall. It may simply lead to a different kind of sickness, you know, sort of mental health related issues. So that's my sort of first or my second pair of questions there, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly, in terms of home working overall, it does lead to a better home-life balance. But as you correctly say, that doesn't always apply to everybody, which is why, in terms of how the policy has been developed, the agile working policy has been developed. It's going to the Personnel Committee tomorrow, I believe. That there is a focus around the awareness that's required in terms of individual circumstances may not suit home working. In terms of practicalities, we've learned a lot from the COVID-19 lockdown. And certainly, for example, within the provision we have for staff working from home, we obviously need to make sure that their environment is good from a health and safety point of view. So supplying proper chairs and desks. But for example, where people have got space restrictions in their accommodation, we've managed to source a very small desk that can be put up and put down at the end of the day. So there's sort of a lot of practicalities that we've looked at to support different circumstances. Obviously, in the lockdown situation, a lot more staff are forced to work from home, and that's a slightly different circumstance. But in the future, there will be options in terms of perhaps touchdown areas for flexibility there. In terms of reduced sickness levels, certainly at the point that I asked the question when we were writing the report, we did have a reduction in sickness levels. I haven't had a report on that recently, so I say that with some caution because that was some months ago now. But I think if you look back to our standard setup within Chelmsford at Southfields, at the Southfield offices, we have a number of open plan office spaces where people work. And, you know, we did find that if staff were reporting in and they had something like a cold or something like that, then it may easily spread through the workforce. So one very particular way that staff sickness has probably been reduced is the spread of infectious disease. And I'm not talking about COVID here. You know, we're talking about the common cold, etc. But I know the point about mental health. We have put a lot of resources and effort into supporting staff through the COVID lockdown. It's something that we already had in place whilst people were working from Southfields, and we've put a lot of provision in place in terms of supporting staff. I mean, I think part of that is actually the opportunity for staff to network and talk to each other, not just about work issues, but try and replicate some of the things that they would have been able to enjoy as part of the office environment.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. And you'll be delighted to know this is my final question. There's a lot of talk throughout this about supporting the Chelmsford Borough Council staff, but I just wondered what has been done or is being done to support health and counsellors. You know, there are 52 of us, probably a much higher average age than the Chelmsford Borough Council staff. So is that something that should fit in with the people strategy, or do you see it as something separate?
It's obviously an important area that needs to be considered. The people strategy focuses specifically in terms of developing and supporting the staff side. But I think there are a number of the areas that we've looked at as part of the people strategy that could and arguably should be looked at in terms of how we as well.
Okay, Kevin, thank you very much for your comprehensive answers, and thank you to the whole team that have put the strategy together, because I think it's really great. Thank you.
Colin, I'm only looking at blue hands.
Yeah,
Simon.
blue hand for yes, sir.
Simon, you wanted to come in there.
I did. I think, in fairness, Councillor Hamilton was before me, but.
Oh, right. Okay. So there you go. I'm eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. No, my raise hand function is not working for some reason, so it has to be a pink hand I have to use.
Okay.
So I apologise for that. I've just a couple of questions. The first is actually in the preamble to report on page 13, where under risk management it says there are no risks associated with the implementation of this strategy, which is a rather bold statement. Does this mean that there is nothing could possibly go wrong with this strategy, or do you mean that this doesn't actually require a formal risk register because there's other ways of measuring it? So, because what is this rather? Because basically, you can read this just telling Cabinet, don't worry, nothing can possibly go wrong with this.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, it does refer to the risk management matrix. In terms of the strategy itself, there are no particular risks, but we will be managing risks associated with the actions and the outcomes that we're looking to achieve as part of the People Development Plan.
Thanks for that. Secondly, it's on page 28, and it's really the top of the page when you're talking really about recruitment, and you talk about you're reviewing whether to accept CVs as part of recruitment rather than just insisting on an application form. Now, isn't there a risk in that in terms of inconsistency of information provided? The reason you have application forms is it's a consistent template that asks for a set amount of information. Particularly if you're going for a mixture of internal and external potential candidates and the information you're going to receive in. So if you are going to accept CVs, is there going to be, like, for example, a checklist to ensure consistency, or is there not a risk in not having a standard application form to ensure consistency? It just puts the risks around that, or the thinking around that.
Yeah, that's a very good question. In terms of our current recruitment and selection policy, application forms are an essential part of that process. In many respects, the process that we currently have has been in common use with large organisations and public sector organisations for some years. Overall, the recruitment and selection market, if you like, is changing. Particularly, I have to say that that's largely led in the private sector, but there are a number of local authorities that are currently looking at different approaches, including some within the Leicestershire area as well. So we're looking carefully at their experiences with the changes. One of the key elements that we want to look at and consider is the other work in the people strategy associated with the behavioural framework in terms of defining the culture and attitudes and approaches to work. And certainly we're interested in looking at the focus around areas like flexibility. So there's a potential to look at those sorts of approaches, but we haven't made a commitment to move over to CVs as yet, because that review process hasn't started.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm very good and glad that you've not just gone to CVs, and I can only say this because I'm at the end of my working career. But if you looked at my CVs and questioned me deeply, you'd find no end of fibs. I'm not quite sure whether they're out and out lies, but they are definitely big fits on CVs, and I would imagine everybody does that as well. Right, so there's a couple of questions that I've got. The first one is about apprenticeships. So some of the lists that you have that the People Strategy has achieved, it's the creation of 8 new apprenticeship opportunities across the council, and you'd be quite rightly proud of that. But a little bit, and I've lost it again now, a little bit further it goes on to say key external factors, which is page 22, and it's the key external factors bullet point heading there, where it says the local area and our plans to support apprenticeships are likely to suffer. Could you tell me in what way, please?
Yes, actually, there's a report or a presentation that I'm taking to Personnel Committee tomorrow that contains some more details around this. So certainly with the current situation with COVID, that has had a negative impact on our opportunity to recruit new apprentices. Within the apprenticeship scheme, there's basically 2 options that we have. And they're not mutually exclusive, but we can use the funding to train up excuse me, existing staff or recruit new apprentices. And it's particularly that second area that's been particularly difficult with the pandemic. Particularly because if we're going to recruit a young person, there's certain disadvantages of recruiting them into an environment where they haven't got the opportunity to actually physically meet other staff and actually learn how to carry out the role. So within the last year, we've only had, practically this last year, we've had 1 external recruitment to an apprenticeship programme that is actually within, it's one that I currently manage. But it takes a lot more effort than usual being able to do it remotely. And just to give you an example, we were planning for construction apprenticeships in September, and a large part of the start of those roles involves shadowing experienced staff going out in the vans, and of course that's just not possible under the current difficulties and restrictions. And even at times where we've had maybe a reduced lockdown or restrictions, if you've got to consider that these people will be apprentices for 2-3 years, it's better to wait until this current pandemic and crisis has blown over before we do recruit.
Okay, so therefore it's not something you're walking away from, but just walking away from at the moment because of the situation. The other one is, again, it's on page 24, a new, second paragraph, a new behavioural framework based on the organisational values will be developed. What will that look like? How will it be developed? Who will have input? Who will develop it?
So what we're looking for there is a simple summarised statement that looks at the culture of the organisation and expectations of staff. What it's not planned to look like is one of the old-fashioned detailed competency frameworks that I think probably belong back in recent history now. But it is, what it will do is hopefully look at some of the expectations of staff working in a modern, flexible environment. It will, if you look at the values that cover customer service, how we work together, and quality of the work and pride in the local community, if you look at those particular aspects, they will all be featured within that behavioural framework.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, on page 25, then you've got, it is proposed that a management charter is developed, which will summarise the role of managers in supporting staff, etc. again, what will this look like, and who's going to develop that charter or manage it?
Well, actually, we have the first draft of that. So the Agile Working Policy is going to the Personnel Committee tomorrow. And as part of that Agile Working Policy, the charter has been produced. What it specifically is addressing is the support for staff who are working remotely. So within the strategy, I think you will find at various places the reference to moving away from managing presenteeism, for example. So there is a different skill set that we're requiring from managers. You know, it's one thing in a traditional sense of being able to look across a busy office and be satisfied as a manager that people are looking busy. But actually, in a flexible, smart environment, the role of the manager completely changes. And in particular, what the Charter focuses on is the supporting staff to get the best out of staff moving forwards if in a remote working scenario.
Thank you for that. And have we worked out how to manage, measure production?
Yes,
as you said, we can look over and think, oh, everybody's busy and they've covered a certain amount of work today. Have we got a situation where we can manage that remotely as well?
Yeah, I mean, part of the work to develop that will be as part of the appraisal review, when we look at personal reviews.
Which have been delayed, haven't they?
Well, yes, only in the sense that under the previous people strategy, we were looking at the concept of smart working. And there's a lot of lessons that we learned from that moving forwards. And the review of the appraisal was associated with the smart working project or work that we did as part of the previous people strategy. And we didn't get to the point where we needed to develop the appraisal to fit in with what had developed under smart working. Clearly, under where we are currently with the new Agile Working Policy that's going to Personnel Committee tomorrow, we're much further ahead and are in a position as part of the action planning for the people strategy to include the review of appraisals now going forwards. And there are different requirements of an appraisal system in a mixed workforce environment where people may be working remotely.
Thank you very much. Overall, before I come to you, Simon, overall, I think it's a very positive piece of work and very comprehensive. I think, I don't want to upset people or tread on your toes, but I think you need to look at or think about what your audience is that will read this. And I think some of the wordings, the explanations may be all right at managerial level, but you need this to be acceptable for all levels to be working at. So, you know, some I had to read several times to sort of work out what it meant. So I don't know whether there could be a reread of it, and probably, I don't mean dumb it down by any means, but make it more exclusive, I think in some cases. I am very concerned still about the well-being of staff and not working with people, and you might not be forced to work at home, but feel obliged to. And I can't help thinking that we're storing up trouble for later years on this, and we do need to manage that very, very closely. And I know we've got to think about their well-being, the costs. I mean, the staff are obviously going to, you'll reimburse their electricity or whatever, come to some sort of arrangements, insurance of working at home. There's all of these things to think about. But overall, I think it's a good strategy to have. It shows that you value the staff, and that is extremely important to make the staff feel valued. as well as you doing something like this. So thank you very much for your input, Kevin. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, I'm a bit conscious of time, but maybe I will just try and summarise, maybe give us an overview very, very quickly about how this fits in. First of all, just addressing the comms point. I think that's very much taken on board, but as we launch this amongst staff, we'll be speaking to the communications team, so Mike Roberts and the team, quite closely, so to develop a communications plan internally to roll this out. And one thing about Mike and the team is they will certainly edit out anything that they feel does not communicate very well across a wider staff group. And leaving aside the language, it's people are busy in their day jobs, so obviously the messages have to be pretty short and crisp to get across. But that's certainly part of what the implementation of this is about. I just thought it might just sort of try and set out where this fits in with what we're trying to do. So I think it's certainly true to say that we have got aspirations around our accommodation and the fact that we're wanting to reduce our accommodation footprint overall. And this is part of 2 or 3 things, or 3 or 4 things that we're putting in place to enable this. So as well as the people strategy, which sort of sets out how we would like people to work, there's also an agile working policy, which will be coming to Personnel Committee pretty soon. We're quite well advanced in working through that, and that will set out some policies about how people will work. There's also an ICT strategy in the pipeline, which will enable, which will partly set out how we plan to enable staff to work. And some of this is remotely, and some of this is within the office, and there are we've got a number of diverse teams, so this can happen in a number of ways. But where we are at the moment is that and again, it sort of reads to the sort of risk element, and are we forcing people? At the moment, the people strategy and the agile working strategy have got no elements within them that actually enables us or requires us to force people to work in a particular way. Now, we have got aspirations to reduce the accommodation, but at the moment, we're not envisaging that we will have to force people to work in a different way. And I think, Kevin was asked about have we done a survey, etc. But we have got some agile working pilots which have produced some helpful feedback. But what I think anecdotally we're getting, and it's quite, for me, in most people I speak to, it's not a question of do I want to be a home worker or an office worker? And again, taking the point, some people who maybe live in a bed sit, they do need to come into work, and we envisage that will be provided. But most people want to come in some days a week, but not others. So they have the advantage of saving some accommodation, some commuting costs. They have the chance to sort of avoid the time involved in that, enable them to sort of settle down and do some work. But most people I speak to do want to come into the office to engage with colleagues, that collaborative work where you have junior staff that need supervision or coaching that will be very necessary for their development, and just generally to see colleagues face to face, which I think we've all struggled with recently, which we all think is very important. So what I'm expecting is that we will, I think generally that will be the new model of work that we will adopt. And I think the challenge for us will be maybe less of a sort of policy or a strategy challenge than more of a managerial one, so that I think most people want to work from home some days and come in other days, which will be great. What we just got to make sure is that everyone doesn't decide to work at home on Mondays and Fridays and then comes in on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays, and the office is overflowing on those days and empty on others. So I think that's what will happen. But again, with what we've got in terms of the strategy and also the agile working policy is an actual absence of any form of compunction of that staff will be forced to work in a different way, and that's certainly not the way we want to go down. The acid test will come when we come to decide precisely what a future accommodation is, and that's something we haven't got to yet. And I guess our experience with this and the implementation of agile working will then drive quite how we want to spec our accommodation needs going forward.
Thank you very much for that, Simon. Councillor Ransom. Councillor Ransom, we need to hear your.
Well, you don't really
tones.
No, no, my silk tones.
I can't see your mouth moving either. Your name's there.
I know. This is it. I have to put. Can you see me now?
Yes.
You can see me now.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. It's just that the report is very good, Kevin, and everybody who has actually been participating in it. The one I'm like the Chair, a little bit. The mental health issue is going to hit most people because of our culture. And we're not used to working from home. So are you going to, I gather from what Simon has said now, there is going to be an actual safety net for that, yes?
Yeah.
Yes. And also this new approach, are you going to drip feed it, or are you going to, you don't want wham bam, thank you ma'am type of thing, you know? You want to be able to drip feed the attitude through, because we're all of a culture that we're used to going into work and we're used to actually a face-to-face and body language, yes? And this would be a big culture shock for most of the employees.
Under normal circumstances, you'd be absolutely right in that we would develop this slowly, but in actual fact, we've already had the big bang, which was COVID lockdown 1.
Yes.
In a week, we had to move majority of our staff, or the biggest majority, so nearly all staff, to be able to work from home, and we achieved wonders as an organisation with that in terms of the IT setup. So we've gone back, we've gone through that big bang scenario in terms of major change, and that actually gives us the luxury to take the time to see the effect of that, and actually we're actually in a process of easing potentially staff back to the office rather than the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it will be done with sensitivities, particularly built in with the pilots is this discussion and the template and guidance for managers about the need to discuss areas like particularly staff wellbeing, isolation, any practicalities around lone working.
And within the people strategy and within the actual strategy of overall strategy, I assume you will have what they call get-togethers, monthly get-togethers with various departments, and that it's just to alleviate, like the Chair, mental health in today's society is more at the forefront, to be honest with you, because of what society is having to put up with, you know. So, you know, and the fact is, if you're talking to somebody, and you know, you can actually express yourself, but if you're on a, like we are here, if there isn't, you can see them, but you don't know what they're actually thinking, whereas face to face you can. Okay.
Absolutely right. Yes, and in terms of the work we've done with the pandemic,
yes,
support for staff in that.
Yeah.
Well, I know WhatsApp groups have come into their own, haven't they? And certain people that usually work together have formed a WhatsApp group, and can be individually very supportive to each other. Margaret, last but not least.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's just really to support what Simon and Kevin have said, because I have asked these questions, I've been quite concerned, and I have followed through what a couple of other councils have done. And I think that's partly why we need, on the recommendations that have been outlined, the opportunity to sort of jump in where needed, and the opportunity to make quick decisions that will facilitate a lot of the things that could affect staff, rather than having to go through a committee structure to get it developed. And I think the style of some of the service managers will be paramount in leading a team and ensuring the people within the team are listened to, that they have a voice. And this is where the empowerment and the ability for staff to voice those opinions and take action, not react, but be proactive. So I think there are lots of opportunities if staff are encouraged to be all they could be. There's tremendous training opportunities. the apprenticeship system I picked up on as well and had a concern. And new members of staff who might not live in Loughborough or live in the borough, they could still be planning to come here, but can't come here. And it's sort of facilitating new staff to be a part of this almost, well, I can't say a faceless organisation because they can see the faces, but the points that have been raised, I'm certainly following, and I've been reassured by the answers I've been given. So it was just to support that what you've said, what you've asked, and what the officers have said has been looked at. We are concerned that staff are listened to and cared for.
Thank you for that,
thank
Margaret.
you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor. Right, so we have two recommendations here that Charnwood Borough Council's People Strategy 2021-2024 as appended to this report is approved, and that the Strategic Director of the Environmental and Corporate Services is given delegated authority to make amendments to the specific actions outlined in this strategy as they are incorporated into the People Development Plan. Right, could I ask you, please, Councillor Bolton, do you support?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to support the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I support the recommendations as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. I support the recommendations as well.
Councillor Hodge-Nicolau.
Thank you, Chair. I do support the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I support the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Ranson.
Thank you, Chair. I support all the recommendations.
And I also support the recommendations. I want to say thank you to Kevin and to Simon and to Councillor Smithovich on their involvement in this. So thank you very much. Right, I'd like to move on to 8B, which is the Loughborough Business Development District, known as the BID. And I'd like to ask Councillor Boker to introduce this item. Welcome, Councillor Boker. Yes.
Apologies, Chair. Could I just very briefly interrupt? I'd like to just make an amendment to what I said in relation to item number 6 about the Audit Committee update. What I should have said is that the Chairman for the Audit Committee will in future ask committee members if there are any issues raised at the meeting, if they want to, for the Scrutiny Commission to consider. I actually said it would be on the agenda of the Audit Committee, and actually it is being done as an informal, it's been done in that way, as opposed to an agenda item. That's all I wanted to clarify.
Sorry, it will be on the running order, won't it?
Yes, that's right, yes, thank you.
I think we all took that as that. But
all right,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I certainly did, and I was listening, honest. Right, sorry, Councillor Boker. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. The report in front of you is to allocate funding up to 25,000 from the reinvestment reserve to meet the cost of the consultation, which is prior to the bid ballot and the ballot itself. As the local authority ballot holder, we are legally responsible for the ballot process as set out within government regulations, and this will actually be for the bid's 3rd term. The bid process, ballot process, has to follow a very thorough consultation because it's a requirement that it includes a statement of the existing baseline services provided by the council in the bid area, and then the bid is being asked to propose services that are additional to the baseline services provided by Charnwood Borough Council. So since the bid levy generates normally, in a normal year, about 1.28 million per bid term, so that's over the 5 years, it is quite an important amount of money to be spent on the delivery of their action plan. So in the ballot, they're asked what they would like to spend that money on. Now, during COVID this year, that collection of the levy has gone down to 70% of the normal take-ins for the year. But then on the other hand, we haven't had loads of events in the market square or other such things that the bid businesses decide to spend money on. So it's still important because we have to hope that we will come out of this COVID pandemic at some point this year, and we can resume our sort of normal activities in Loughborough. So that's it really. It's just the request to take up to 25 million. 25,000, not million.
You're not having that much.
25,000 out of our reinvestment reserve. If you want any more detail, then we have Sylvia here to fill in that detail for us. But it's not really a and or, it's this is what we need to do.
Okay. So it's pointless coming to scrutiny then? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, I didn't say that.
Oh, right, okay.
Don't put words in people's mouths, even if you put 50 on your CV.
I was reading between. Right, Sylvia, would you like to comment on anything further, or would you like to wait for questions?
I think just one thing, if I could add, Chair, is that just to give you a little bit detail of how that money will be spent, one of the expenditures will be the recruitment of an external company that are used to developing bid proposals in accordance with regulations. And the advantage of that is that basically they have an in-depth knowledge of particularly the nationals and what they're wanting to see within bids. And so that does help. That's something that obviously the bid management wouldn't have access to. So that's an advantage of involving an external company to make sure they get the very best proposal, and it's formed with up-to-date information of what particularly the nationals are looking for. The consultation process itself is very thorough, and the bid management will take an active role in that. We've estimated that will actually, in time, will be around the 20,000 to 25,000. So that in a sense, the bid will be matching the ask from the council in their time, and they'll be concentrating to make sure that they consult and speak to the businesses personally, because the strength of the bid action plan, the management, the proposal will be on making sure that the actual proposal meets the needs of the businesses and they address those needs. The other point is that there's then 7,500 that they've costed out for the design and print of the bid ballot campaign documents. So there can be absolute clarity on what the business plan encloses and what's being put forward. And then the final part of the money is the actual cost of the ballot itself. So there'd be the actual ballot notifications and vote papers. So that's how the actual expenditure, that's what makes up that expenditure.
Okay, if I could ask you, thank you very much, Sylvia. If I could just ask you, this is the third cycle, yeah?
Yes.
So when it was first created, was it by a ballot then?
Yes, the process has not changed greatly. Obviously, legislation is updated, and we follow best practice and we follow the current legislation. So as well, the external company will be up to date with any recommendations and changes.
Is this the same external company, or have we changed?
The bid will go through a procurement process, but it is very likely that they will stick with the same company that the bid have used for the last 2 terms.
Okay, so therefore, my question is if obviously this has to come every 5 years, doesn't it? So how come we haven't put something away each year towards the ballot?
It's a very good question, and it's one that has been posed before. One thing I would say is that when you're going out to ballot, you have to show how the money will be spent, and there's 25,000. There's the collection of the ballot is around 20,000 per year. So when you times that over 5 years, just the collection of the levy alone comes to a substantial amount. Some local authorities that still collect their rates internally aren't charged that amount. So when you actually look at benchmarking the cost of running a bid, Loughborough comes up in the higher end of that table. So if they were going out to ballot saying this is what it costs to collect the levy, and on top of that we're going to charge for the development of the business plan and all of that, it would potentially put a lot of businesses off voting for a ballot. So I think it's very much already recognising there's a lot of costs that would be administrative before you get on to delivering what the businesses wanted to achieve.
So this reinvestment fund is a Charnwood fund, not just for Loughborough, isn't it? If you see where I'm coming from, it's coming from the pot that's Charnwood and not Loughborough centric.
Yeah.
So and this is for the ballot for the bid, which is Loughborough based. Can we not do this in house? Have we not got the capability of doing it ourselves?
I think there would be a problem with doing it in house because basically the council would not be neutral within the process. So basically the actual process has got to be developed through by the bid, and then they come to the council with a proposal which we would need it would need to go to the cabinet to be approved.
Okay.
The process has to be independent of the council.
It has to be it has to be an independent process.
Well, I suppose so does elections, local elections as well, but the council still handles those. Yeah. So I'm not quite sure on that. So I've got a hand up, which is Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one question, which again is linked in, I think, with what Councillor Seaton was asking. It's going to cost us £25,000. We've waived the collection of the bid levy fee of approximately £19,000. We also provided an office space, I'm assuming at the Charnwood offices, for the bid, so they could give notice on their existing lease. So my question is, do you know what amount of money was saved by the bid because we provided them with office space, or did we actually charge them for using the office space?
Okay. No, there wasn't a charge made for using the office space. At the beginning of the COVID, if I could take you back to when the bid were in the process of collecting the levy. The levy's collected in 2 6-month blocks at the beginning of the financial year and then another one in July. And businesses were being advised through their banks and in other ways of not to pay the levy in terms of business survival. So at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, there were very few businesses actually paying their levy. So in order for the council to assist the bid and to stop the bid going under, really, they agreed to waive the collection fee. Due to the performance of the bid over the last since March, basically, the bid have reorganised their business plan to directly support businesses, whether it's about getting them online for sales, whether giving them business advice, helping them with their websites, all sorts of things. And we now know that over 200,000 has been collected against what would be a normal year of 230,000. So they have caught up with many businesses then actually paying their levy in the second collection. But at the beginning of the year, it seemed very unlikely that businesses would be paying their levy. So in summary, the bid wasn't asked for any rent. They've only used the office space obviously because they're working from home like a lot of people are now. They've not used much of the office space, but it has provided them a base, and it's provided them a base for their materials as well.
Actually, they're not going to be permanent tenants anyway, because they'll be moving into the new student accommodation flats thing at Ormbury Gap. So when that's finished in the summer, they'll be moving in there.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I still cannot understand why this, and that's probably me, why 5,000 can't be collected each year from this to make the 25,000 every 5 years. I still don't understand how it can't do that.
There's nothing to, sorry to interrupt, Chair. There's nothing to stop them putting funding aside, but the bid management felt
from
that
the bid.
Yeah, if the bid management felt that if they were putting money aside to support the bid process as well as paying the levy collection fee, a large amount of the money that was being collected through the bid levy would go.
So that would be the 24,000 then per year, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I've got no other hands up. So we've got, I still don't quite understand why, but I've still got 4 recommendations here: to delegate authority to the Chief Executive to undertake the big ballot, to allocate up to £25,000 from the reinvestment reserves to meet the cost of these consultation prior to the bid ballot and the ballot itself, to delegate authority of the Chief Executive to agree with the bid company a baseline of Borough Council Town Centre services, and to delegate authority to the Strategic Director for Corporate Services to agree with the bid company, if required, an operating agreement to cover the collection of the bid levy. Okay, I'll ask you each in turn, please, whether you will support those recommendations. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to support the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I support the recommendations.
Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. I support the recommendations.
Councillor Hodge-Nicolau.
Thank you, Chair. I support them.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I support the recommendations.
Councillor Ranson.
Thank you, Chair. I support all recommendations.
I support the recommendations, but I will ask for further clarification on that. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to now item 9, pre-discussion scrutiny. Sorry, Councillor Boker and
please excuse me, but I've got another meeting to go to, a parish council meeting.
That's what I was just going to say. Councillor Boker, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sylvia Wright, thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, item 9, Karen, would you introduce this report to me, please? It's on page 43 of your agenda, your papers.
Thank you, Chair. This is a reporting in for information the Cabinet's responses to the recommendations submitted to the Commission on items considered for pre-scrutiny. So these relate to items A to C as listed on page 43 and is for noting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Item 10 is budget scrutiny panel reports. The supplementary reports that you received today. Councillor Hodge-Nicolau, could you introduce this report to me, please, and welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I will start by saying a huge thanks to the members of the panel and the council officers, Mrs. Conway and Mrs. Widdowson. They were extremely helpful for the production of this report. We had 3 meetings, the first one 29th of September, second one 1st of December, and the last one on the 5th of January. We considered the Budget Scrutiny Report 1920, the revised Budget 2021, the revised Capital Plan 2023, and the draft Budget 21-22. We considered the risk and benefits of the enterprise zone and the town deal. Also, we consider the impact on council tax. We went through checks and balances of commercial property acquisitions, and we noticed the 3.5% net income to be achieved. We sought further information regarding the environmental services fleet. We had an update regarding the government local settlement. I will summarize the views of the panel in a bullet point manner. There is a commitment towards the science and innovation zone, the Townwood campus, and the town deal. We notice that the pandemic will put pressure on maintaining good service provision. In this context, we notice the proposed increase in council tax. We hope this increase will be modest and within reason. As regards the recommendations, we notice the inclination towards reducing the scrutiny panels. There was a strong sentiment by a number of members that the standards of scrutiny should be maintained. The potential saving of £10,000 does not justify this reduction, and it may be seen as an attempt to bypass checks and balances. We were informed about forthcoming structural changes in the scrutiny. We feel that these changes are very important. That's why we recommend that all members should be able to participate in the finalization of these structural changes. Moving on, we recommend that the income from commercial investment should be monitored and reported on a monthly basis by either scrutiny or audit. We recommend to recognize the highly volatile situation due to COVID and the risks for finance. We noticed that underspend was built into the budget 1920 to balance the books. This is not a sustainable strategy, and we recommend a revision. We recommend to introduce efficiency metrics on committees and panels and consider developmental needs to improve efficiencies. We recommend an active and far-reaching advertising campaign to promote the building control service in view of 413K overspend in building control fees. We recommend the panel to be provided with breakdowns of overall numbers. For example, if we say we need £10 million towards enterprise zone, this is a good thing, we support it, but this is a very nicely rounded number. It should be itemized. We recommend more continuity in the budget scrutiny panel to get a deeper insight. If you replace members just about the time they start to understand what is happening, they don't achieve the desired efficiency. I'm cautious of the time, and I'm not going to go through all observations which are going to be included in the draft. I would like to invite your comments before asking for your permission to produce this report to the Cabinet on the 11th of the 2nd. Thank you. Councillor Seaton, you are muted.
Councillor Hardge-Nicolau, thank you very much for both reminders. So, Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. Just for transparency to other members, there has been a conversation, because one of the actions, if you notice, we have to do is to look at, particularly on recommendation number 1, and to inform the head of strategic support of our views. That's on page 6. Now, there has been a conversation between the chairs of and chairs and vice chairs of Scrutiny Commission and Audit Commission. We actually discussed this the other day there, and it was just about perhaps amending to clarify, amending the wording just to kind of clarify the process, or simplify or make the process more neat, as it were. And that would be therefore, there is this view that all councillors have to be involved, and that's fine. But the way that current wording is quite an unwieldy process, where you're basically saying 52 councillors will be inputting directly into the Scrutiny Commission meeting in March 2021. Plus, as my understanding, that would also mean members of the executive, and so there's a kind of clash going on there. So a neater wording would be to, rather than saying all councillors, if you look at what it says in the view of the additional information received at this meeting on 5th January 2021, rather than saying all councillors, we would replace it with the wording of the head of strategic support be requested to consult with all members of the existing 4 standing scrutiny committees in preparing the report on this matter, that is due to be considered by the Scrutiny Commission at its meeting in March 2021. So what that basically means is, rather than having all councillors involved at the stage, what is that the head of strategic support consult all members of all scrutiny committees in preparing the report, and of course eventually it will go to full council, so all councillors will get to see it in the end. So if people want to understand that amendment, I'm quite happy for officers perhaps to kind of tidy that wording, but that's the concept, to create a kind of a neater process. Therefore, just amend the wording, but it still has the concept eventually it will go to full council, all councillors will be inputting, but the actual process will be that the head of strategic support consults with all members of all scrutiny committees, and that input then goes to the Scrutiny Commission, and then that report then will go to Cabinet and full council.
Councillor Bolton. Sorry, Councillor Hamilton, I cut you off then.
That's my amendment, my suggested amendment.
Thank you.
I know that Councillor Hardge-Nicolau will probably wish to respond, but I just wanted to say that I do support what Councillor Hamilton has just said. Thank you.
And as chair, I think I know that I support what Councillor Hamilton has said as well. I think it neatens it up. It takes out. We don't want the cabinet involved. So the implication of the other wording was all councillors. It was all encompassing, and it can't be. So we are talking about quite a few councillors that are on the 4 scrutiny committees anyway, and the fact that it does go to full council, so all councillors will in the end have an opportunity to be involved. So I agree with those rewordings as well. Councillor Haj-Nicolau.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome your comments, but I just want to stick with the spirit of the discussion in the committee. And the spirit of the discussion, in my opinion, was actually to be very pluralistic, to involve as many people as possible. So if actually the rewarding, which will of course lead to a slightly different process, guarantees that actually we are going to have pluralism and involve everybody to be involved, everybody to know what's happening, and everybody will kind of agree, I will be absolutely, it will be all right with me.
Okay, Councillor Widdowson, I'm sorry, Karen Widdowson. The wording that Councillor Hamilton used was correct?
Yeah. Yes, Chair. And the wording that Councillor Hamilton referred to is very, very clear, and it's been seconded by Councillor Bolton. So it's now, when you come to once everyone's deliberated the report, if you can get confirmation that everybody is in agreement with that amendment, and the wording was very clear to me, and the chairman of the budget scrutiny panel has also indicated his support for that amendment as well. Thank you.
Adrian Ward, I think you intimated that it doesn't have to be a recommendation then? The recommendation can be removed, it automatically goes through?
I think, Chair, because this is a recommendation about the structure of scrutiny, which Scrutiny Commission and ultimately full council have the most interest in, and full council will have the final say because it would require a change to the constitution. My view is that it would be more appropriate if Scrutiny Commission wished to recommend to me this evening something along the lines of Councillor Hamilton's proposal. I would, if that is the decision of the Commission tonight, I will obviously take that on board and make sure that happens, and whatever comes out of the consultation is input into my report to you in March. I don't therefore think it needs to be a separate recommendation to Cabinet,
okay,
because the scrutiny review is something Scrutiny Commission have asked for, not Cabinet.
Okay, I'm quite happy with that. Councillor Nicolau, Haj-Nicolau.
Thank you, Chair. I'm comfortable with this. We have made the point, and the point has been transmitted to the Scrutiny Commission. So if the Commission is happy, I am not going to object.
Lovely, thank you. So do we need to formalise that with a vote, or just accept it as it is, please?
So, Chair, if I can help you, just if it would be recommended that you just see how other members feel about that suggestion that it goes to Adrian Ward while he gathers in the views of members. So if everybody else on the committee is in agreement with that, so just go around the names and just check.
Okay, Councillor Bolton.
Yes, I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll support that as well.
Councillor Haj-Nicolau.
I will support it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. I support this.
Thank you. Councillor Ransom.
I support this with one caveat, Chair. I will, Adrian, actually contact all councillors on an email or what to actually verify this?
I don't know whether it needs to be verified. It will be part of the.
Well, if we're changing the
Scrutiny
constitution,
Commission.
surely it
Oh,
has
no,
to
we're
be.
not changing it. Adrian?
Just to clarify, Chair, if this is what Scrutiny Commission resolves this evening, I will send round an email to all councillors who are members of the 4 scrutiny committees.
Oh, yeah.
Setting out the background with a bit of information for them and seeking their views on the future potential changes to Scrutiny Commission structure. That would then need to go to full council to be approved, which is what I think you said, Chair. All 52 councillors would get a chance to consider and vote on any final proposals, Chair.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Ransom.
I agree with that. Then. Thank you.
Councillor, oh, it's me. I agree with everything as well. So thank you very much. Right. So back to the paper. So thank you very much, Councillor Nicolau, for the input, and thank you for the thank you as well, because I was on this committee, and as was Councillor Hamilton and Councillor Bolton. So I'm waffling now because I've forgotten where I am. Are there any comments that anybody would like to make on the budget report? Any questions or comments, please? No blue hands up. Okay. So, I've now got to confirm that the Commission has considered the report and recommendations put forward by the Budget Scrutiny Committee are confirmed, and these recommendations will be put forward to the Cabinet for their consideration. It doesn't say on here, Karen, that I have to do another vote.
It doesn't, no, actually, but it would
we
be
have to,
just,
don't we?
Yeah, I was going to say, just for clarity, you are right.
Okay.
You just need to go around again and say in relation to the remaining recommendations that everybody is content with them or not, as the case would be.
What Karen said. Councillor Bolton.
Yes, I'm very happy with that, Chair.
Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, I'm happy as well with that. Thank you.
Councillor Nicolau.
I'm content with this, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm content with that.
Sorry, I went off alphabetical order then, didn't I?
It through me.
Well, there you go. I'm going to say caution to the wind, Councillor Ransom.
Yes, I'm happy with that, Chair.
And I'm happy with it, as I hope Colin Hamilton is as well.
I'm also happy with it, yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, so now we'll move on and welcome Matt Bradford to item 11A, bulky waste collection charges, and also introduce, sorry, yes.
Madam Chair, it's now my item, the Scrutiny Work Programme.
Oh, crikey.
Jumped ahead to item 11A. I'm number 11. But
you're number 11. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So the Scrutiny Work Programme, this report sets out as an attachment the 3 work programmes for each of the scrutiny committees. And as the normal process is that an email is sent from Sally Watson, the clerk to the committee, checking with members of each of the directorate-based committees if they have any items that the Scrutiny Commission would like them to add to the work programme. And I understand that on page number 47, which is the Corporate Services Scrutiny Work Programme, there is a request from a member to add an item to the February Scrutiny Commission agenda for planning fee income 2019-20 revenue impact. No other requests have been received to add anything to the Scrutiny Commission work programme. That is the only one at this point in time. And then following this item, we will be considering Matt Bradford's item, which was requested at the last meeting for bulky waste collection charges. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Karen. Right, so item 11A.
So can Can I just check everyone's happy with that item being added to the agenda?
Yeah.
I can see lots of noddings there, so we'll take that as consensus that that can be added to the Scrutiny Commission work programme for the February meeting. Thank you.
Chair, if you want me to propose that, I'm happy to propose that.
No, that's
Okay.
fine. Thank you. The other things, the other items that have been recognised, Karen, they'll come on the item 12.
Yes.
So, bulky waste collection. Welcome, Councillor Lee Harper-Davis. Would you like to kick off?
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone, formally. So Scrutiny asked some while ago to review where we're at with the bulky waste collections, and Matt has circulated the paper. Obviously, charges for bulky waste collections were introduced in October 2019 with Cabinet approval in July 2019. A Cabinet paper in June 2020 reviewed the implementation phase of the charges, and you asked for a review. And obviously we know the bulky waste collection is £20 for up to 3 items. So the paper is there before you, and I'm sure if there's any more questions that you need, I'm sure there will be. I'm sure Matt will be happy to answer any technicalities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Matt, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Harper-Davis. I think we've covered that in the main introduction. I'm happy to take any questions on the content of the report or any other clarifications that members might like to seek regarding the implementation of the charges from October 2019. I'd just probably like to say, and this is in the report, that it, as Bill knows, it's been an unusual year. And it's been very unusual in the waste collection industry as well. So our household waste collections from wheelie bins, the tonnages have increased by about 10% on residual waste and recycling, and we've seen similar increases in the amount of bulky waste that we are collecting. The figures that you'll see in front of you just suggest that the implementation has been quite successful in generating the income that we sought to increase. When considering this, I think members have to take into account that the bulky waste service was suspended for a short period of time in March last year up until May. But that coincided with the closure of the household waste and recycling centres by the county council, so none of the tips were open, and this did lead to an increase in bookings with us as well. So I think with the finance side of things, I think we have to be careful that we don't take this as a sort of sign of what we're going to get in the future, because we are operating under quite strange circumstances. And I think that's it, really. I'm happy to take any questions.
I've just got one question, which is the equality and diversity heading, which is, I wouldn't have considered it under that heading, but it's the hardship cases. You've had 70 applications for charges to be waived, and out of those, 22 cases have been granted. Is this because of financial hardships, or that there are benefits, or what? And how have you assessed that it was 22 out of the 70, please?
Right. So when the charges were introduced, it was recommended that we had an exceptional hardship scheme for people that couldn't afford to pay the £20 charge, and there is a criteria under which we assess exceptional hardship for people. So it isn't a concessionary scheme, so you don't get the charge waived if you're on certain types of benefit or pensions. We have a look at people's individual circumstances, their income, expenditure, any savings that they've got, their ability to use the tip, whether they're disabled, and whether there are any other special circumstances which mean that they cannot make that payment to us. I think initially when we introduced the charges. Residents weren't obviously used to paying, and we had quite an influx of claims for exceptional hardship at the start that we turned down, and I think people were trying to avoid payment for a service that they'd had for free for a long time, if I'm honest, and the number of claims has dropped off steadily, but we are still assessing them, but there's quite a detailed criteria there that we use to assess people's ability to pay, and we use that, and wherever we can demonstrate that someone can't genuinely pay for the service, the charge is waived and the collections are made.
Okay. I must admit, I'm pleasantly surprised. I don't know whether you were, Matt, that the fly tipping has not increased greatly, and there's been a good uptake of this, and it's been accepted relatively easy.
Yeah, I think it's been accepted relatively well by residents. The report does say that satisfaction's gone down marginally, customer satisfaction, and I think that's probably to be expected given that we now charge for a service that we provided for free. When we introduced the charge, we were one of 15 councils nationally, so probably about 350, 400 authorities that still charged. So it is the norm amongst other councils to charge for this service, and I think that residents have accepted that, and we've had the sort of numbers that we've anticipated through. In fact, we've increased the throughput has been more than we expected, and there hasn't been that huge impact on fly tipping that was considered in the risk assessment. I think at the time we did say that we didn't think that would come to fruition, and that has shown to be the case.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one very brief question on page 58, please. The first full year generated more than £135,000. I just wanted to ask, what was our projected income, and what were the costs associated with that £135 of income?
So the projected income, that 12 months runs from October 19 to October 20, so it spans two financial years. But our projected income at the start was 60,000 per annum. So we've exceeded that quite considerably. As I said, there are some strange circumstances that mean that the service is in quite high demand, has been in high demand during the last year. The budget, taking into account our back office costs and our contractual costs for that, I would say that we're probably covering the costs of the service, maybe making a small surplus or deficit on that 135,000. But as I say, we are in that stage where people have got restricted access to the household waste sites at the moment through the booking system. The tips have been closed, and people have been spending a lot of time at home and disposing of more waste than they would do normally. So whether we receive that amount in future years, I'm not sure, if I'm honest.
Okay, that's great, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know that you have, not aggressively, that's wrong, but actively increasing or marketing your business waste collection as well. And has that gone from strength to strength?
The business waste is quite tricky at the moment. It's a competitive market, and a lot of businesses have been sort of stopping and starting to operate. So I can't say that we've enjoyed the same success with the business rates that the business waste that we have with this, but we are continuing to push that, and hopefully we'll pick up a few more customers as we go. but I think that's more of a steady growth on that one than the exceeding the budget anticipated quite substantially here.
Well, I think it was the removal of the bring sites that probably should have coincided a bit more with you increasing the business side. But of course, the bring sites were usually in pub car parks and places like that. And obviously the glass isn't being collected. And so very difficult.
So part of the reason that we took the bring sites away was that there was no monitoring of the bring sites, and it was used by some businesses as a way of diverting business waste into the household waste stream. And obviously, at a similar time to that, we started our commercial waste collection. So we were going quite well with that until the COVID hit. That's sort of plateaued off a bit now, but we are continuing to provide that service and hope that it will go from strength to strength in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more questions at all? No. The Commission has then noted the report, and very pleased with the report as well, because it doesn't reflect how aghast I was when charges were first made and going, oh, the world will be dumped with rubbish, and it's not happened. So touch wood on there, and well done for taking that dive into the deep waters. So thank you very much, Councillor Lee Harper-Davis for attending, and Matt, thank you for attending.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good evening all.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Matt.
And now we're alone. Right, item 12, Scrutiny Commission work programme, please. Page 59, starts at 59 on your papers. Karen, could you introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the last item, and so this is the Scrutiny Commission work programme, and which I'll briefly go through and make suggestions where you may wish to add some items. And also we have the list of key decisions as well. So looking at the Scrutiny Commission work programme, on page number 63, we've obviously got the review of the scrutiny structure coming to the 8th of March meeting, and we've also got the annual scrutiny report, which will be a bumper one because it will be over 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And then following on from the 8th of March, at the April meeting, apologies, you can see there's a number of items still to be scheduled, and this is where members need to indicate if there's anything they wish to add and actually have scheduled on the work programme. One that I've picked up is the last item, which is a corporate delivery plan, and that is going to Cabinet on the 11th of March. And so I suggest that possibly goes as a pre-scrutiny decision item at the 8th of March meeting. It is also on the forward programme as well, and the list of key decisions, apologies. So, so would you like that adding to the work programme?
Yes, please. Yes.
I can see lots of members nodding, so I will take that as a yes. We'll add that to the work programme. Is there any other items members might wish to add to the work programme?
Councillor Hodge, Leon, you can go if you want.
No, he's a member.
Oh, he's a member? Of course he is. I say that each time, don't I? I thought he was just here for the budget.
I thought you wanted me out.
No, no, Leon. Stay, please. Sorry. Yes, I'd like the on there, page 64, for the air quality review and assessment. It has been put off and off and off, and I don't know why. From February 20. So should we should have a review, shouldn't we?
So if I make the suggestion that we potentially have it put on the April meeting as opposed to the March one, because we do need to check with officers if that's possible, but if possible, we'll put that through for the April meeting. Any other ones you want adding on?
The Children and Families Wellbeing Service update. And that was last done on the 1st of June, 2020. So is that an annual thing to be put on?
I think Councillor Bolton wants to come in at this point.
Councillor Bolton, sorry.
No, that's okay. I may be wrong on this, but should we not be scrutinising the local plan?
Oh, that's in the list of key decisions. Yeah, we'll come on to that in a moment.
I've got ahead of myself, or of you anyway.
So the Children and Families Wellbeing Service in Charnwood.
Through you, Chair, as the clerk for the Neighbourhoods and Community Wellbeing Committee, that one was last looked at by the Neighbourhoods and Community Wellbeing on the 10th of March.
Right. Okay.
So it's
coming up.
It's not necessarily something that's done on an annual basis.
Right.
It's a partner sort of programme that's run by the county council, and I think there were going to be some changes, and I would have to look up the information from what was actually agreed at the previous Neighbourhoods and Community Wellbeing Committee.
Okay, because obviously it would take in from March to March. It would take in how the COVID affected the working structure of this, wouldn't it?
It would, and it would be something that the borough council can be sort of they're partnered with the county council, and they can be involved in sort of explaining some of that. But it is actually a county council led initiative.
And I leave that with you then, Nikki, to liaise with the officers.
So, Chair, we'll leave it as the clerk to that particular directorate-based committee will investigate where progress is, with potentially that coming to a future meeting, potentially maybe April. We'll leave it like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's three items there.
Councillor Brooks put his hand up at some point. Councillor Brooks.
Sorry, yes, Chair. It was just in relation to the Children and Family Wellbeing Service update, because obviously I'm the Vice Chair of the Neighbourhoods and Community Wellbeing Scrutiny Group. I did find that particularly difficult to scrutinise because there's very little control we have at Charnwood over that, because it is by our partners.
Yeah.
So I was just going to advise, just to say that I don't think it's worth bringing that to the forefront at the moment.
Okay.
So can I get a clear direction? Do you want that for the clerk to look into, or do you not want it adding?
Well, I regularly, because I'm Children's and Families Cabinet Support on county. So I do know that it's run by the county council, and I will scrutinise that progress all the way through.
So possibly delete it then from this work programme?
Yeah, but we reviewed it in March, so there was a reason why we reviewed it in March. You're saying reviewed it in March?
Councillor Brooks wants to come back.
Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, the main point of bringing it to the scrutiny was more just to understand the service and how we fit into it, kind of as a partnership, and to see where we could offer our scrutiny to improve the service. But like I say, because it was
very difficult.
Yeah, there's not really much influence we have over that.
Okay, Jill, that's a lovely white hand you've got there. Councillor Bolton, is that your hand up?
No.
Oh,
I was just crossing my arms.
No, I've got a white hand on your screen.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, the white hand there.
No.
Okay.
Okay, so what we're
yes,
going to do?
If you remove it, then Karen, thank you very much.
So that will delete that one. Okay, thank you. And then, so that's the work programme, the Scrutiny Commission work programme, and then moving on to the forthcoming executive key decisions. So this is on page 67 onwards. So Charnwood local plan, I've actually highlighted that Would you like that to be pre-scrutinised? Yes, I can see lots of members nodding, so we'll add that one to it. And the other one I've already picked up was the delivery of the corporate strategy for the year 2021-22. So I'd already picked that one up already, so that will be added in. And then the other item, potentially, the ICT strategy, which is going to Cabinet in March. Would you like that adding? Bear in mind, though, your meeting in March is going to be a very heavy meeting because you're going to have scrutiny structure.
It was mentioned on the people strategy that the IT strategy is being updated to coincide with the people strategy. So probably it is something that we do need to look at. Please.
Okay.
How heavy is it in March?
So you're going to have the local plan, which is a very big item then. Then you'll have the ICT strategy. You're going to have the scrutiny structure item. And you're also going to potentially have the air quality item.
Yeah.
And the other document, find it. Yeah, and the other one that I've just lost, corporate delivery plan as well. So there's quite a number of items there as well. So entirely up to you, obviously. Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
So
too busy.
What do you want to do? Yeah, because it is a busy agenda, but I'm not saying
no. Take the ICT off, but it's no good doing it afterwards because we'll have missed it. But
so not the ICT, not that one, but the other items you want to keep
at page 68, which is the enterprise zone, forward funding Loughborough University Science and Enterprise Park. So it's to give specific approval to enter into a loan that will facilitate a grant of 6 million to LUSCP for development of the EZ site. Is that something that the audit committee will pick up?
You'd have to speak to the chair of the audit committee about that. It doesn't feel like it would be potentially an audit committee item.
I'm just looking at the 6 million. So whether it's something that we should look at.
And that's for the February meeting,
yeah.
As well, so pre-scrutiny. So do you want to add that one in then?
Yes, please. Yeah.
I've got lots of, for the purposes of transparency, I can see members are in agreement with that. Yes, so add that one in. Okay, good. Okay, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
So through you, Chair, I've just had a look at the minutes of the meeting of the Neighbourhoods and Community Wellbeing Committee that was on in March 2020.
All right, yeah.
And I think the reason that it was added into your scrutiny work programme was because there was a resolution that the performance data and the number of case referrals for Charnwood Borough be requested from LCC, that would be circulated to the committee in 6 months' time. But other than that, it was a report that was noted, and the committee did decide that they didn't feel that further scrutiny was required because the relationship was clarified quite clearly to them at the time.
Okay, Nikki, thank you very much for that. Thank you. Right, any other comments? Pearls of wisdom? No. Well, thank you very much for attending tonight, and I hope you have a good rest of the week.